Yo YouTube, what's going on? It's HIGHMMA and today we are here to discuss the future of the middleweight division and how I would decide the upcoming fights for some of the contenders. I'm not going to go through absolutely all of them, but I'm going to go through most, just some fights that I've recently been thinking should be made if they haven't been announced already. So let's not fuck around with our dicks and our palms. Let's get straight into the first fight I want to talk about today. The first fight I am talking about is the recently rumored matchup of MVP versus Sharabullet-Magomedov at 185. I think they're talking about later this year. MVP recently was in an interview saying that after his current grappling competition coming up against Carlos Condit at 185 pounds, he wouldn't mind fighting Sharabullet afterwards. And honestly, that could be alright for MVP, considering that Sharabullet has a hole in the grappling. If MVP's grappling is pretty sharp at the moment, maybe that might be an advantage for him against Sharabullet. Me personally, I would pick Sharabullet to win, and I would root for him to win, because I'm not the biggest MVP fan in the world. I'm going to keep it real with you all, but I like to keep my opinion away from my actual takes on the fights. So why not set up this fight? You know, you've got Sharabullet, who's now in the rankings. He needs more big names to keep getting his name out there. This is a huge superstar on the horizon for the UFC. They need to be careful about who they match him up with, because as soon as someone fraud checks his grappling, all of that hype could be gone. So I think an MVP fight where more than likely is going to be a mainly striking matchup is exactly what we need to do. And honestly, this could end up being another emphatic finish for Sharabullet-Magomedov. Think MVP is someone who likes to fight really cocky, leave his chin up in the air. Sharabullet might just fucking touch up this motherfucker like he touched up Petrosian with some double spinning back fists. You never fucking know. It could be anything. So I think we should be seeing Sharabullet-Magomedov versus Michael Venom Page next at 185. Let's fucking go. But there's not much more I can say about this fight, so let's keep it stepping through this list of fights I want to talk about today. The next one we are talking about is Anthony Hernandez versus Paulo Costa. Hernandez coming off of a great win against Michel Pereira, a fight that I predicted perfectly, by the way. I knew he was getting that win. I think his relentless pressure style is something that would see success against Paulo Costa, who has been fighting really defensive in his last couple of fights against Robert Whittaker and Sean Strickland. I think this is a fight we should see next. You've got Hernandez on a 2-fight win streak. Could be more. I'm not too sure. You know, he beat Kopylov earlier in the year. Now he's beating Pereira. You've got Costa on a 2-fight loss streak. They're not that far from each other in the rankings. I think this is a perfect matchup. If Costa gets the win, it gets his name back up there in the fucking rankings, because he's just beaten a really good looking upcoming contender. And if Hernandez can take out a really big name like Paulo Costa, his name is almost thrown straight up there into title talks. You never fucking know. This is someone with a style that is really successful against most of these middleweight strikers. We could see him taking out a Cannonier. You know, I don't even know who the fuck else, man. Maybe even an Imavov. You don't know what's going to happen next. So just keep your eye on Hernandez, and also keep your eye out for this fight, because I really feel like it could be announced, unless they announce Paulo Costa versus Sharabullet, which I have seen a couple of people asking for. I personally feel like this fight would be a bit better, and I'd be more interested in seeing the MVP versus Sharabullet fight. But we'll just have to wait and see, motherfuckers. But let's not stay on this fight for too long. Let's keep moving through the list, because the next fight I am talking about today is Roman Delid versus Brendan Allen. Two kind of regular schmegular contenders in the middleweight division, if I say so myself. You've got Delid, who isn't doing too bad recently. He beat Anthony Smith at light heavyweight, then came back down to middleweight and beat Kevin Holland in a kind of anticlimactic fight, because it was a rib injury or whatever the fuck was going on there. And you've got Brendan Allen, who was on a really good win streak, but just lost to motherfucking not even Delid, bro. I keep getting these motherfuckers mixed up making this video. He lost to Imavov on the Paris fight night, and Imavov actually did really well in that fight. I was really impressed with his takedown defense. We'll get into him in a minute, but I think this is a fight that would be a really good watch. You've got Allen with some really strong grappling, and you've got Delid that is just kind of good at everything. You know, there's nothing too exciting about the fight, but it has been booked before and cancelled. It would be really good to see it ran back. Well, not that it needs to be run back, but we just need to see it. I think this is a really winnable fight for Brendan Allen, if I'm honest, and I think this is a really good name to get under his belt and to get him back in the win column, so we can see him rising his way up through the rankings in middleweight again. Because at the moment now, people are saying that Chris Curtis won both fights, and they're really discrediting Alan's name, even though I personally think he's a really good contender, and Imavov is just happens to be one of the best middleweights that we just didn't realize, and we didn't think about it too deeply because he was fighting someone like Alan, who doesn't have a huge name, and we need both of these guys to get their names up a bit because you've got Delid yo-yoing with divisions. We don't really know where he wants to stay or what he wants to do. This would be a good fight to really set what he wants to do in stone and grab that middleweight strap. Not that I think he could ever do it, but they must be his intentions if he's fucking fighting in the UFC. So let's stop talking about this fight and get on to the next one, because I want to talk about Caio Baralho versus Imavov. I think this is one of the biggest fights that you need to make in the middleweight top 5 right now. You've got Caio Baralho coming off of that amazing finish against Cannonier in their fight that was in a Fight Night main event a couple months ago. I was really happy with Baralho in that fight. He showed some really good durability. He showed he could take really high levels of damage and keep going forward. Cannonier is one of the hardest hitters in middleweight. I would say probably the hardest hitter in middleweight. And I just think we need to see this fight, because you've got Imavov, who's coming off of that really great win against Brendan Allen, as we were saying, one of the highest level strikers in the middleweight division, some really, really good takedown defense as well. Not that I really think that Baralho would want to turn this into a grappling match, but Baralho does have some really good grappling as well. I am super impressed with what I see from both of these guys. They're both amazing fighters, and I think this is an absolute war that you could make in the top 5. Title eliminator bout for after Dricus and Strickland and Khamzat, but I'll get into those in a minute. I think this is just a really, really great kind of Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier kind of fight, but for middleweight, you know, just some really high-level contenders going at it. Tell me you wouldn't want to see this fight. Really, really underrated matchmaking right here. I feel like a lot of people won't really consider someone like Imavov to be super high level because, you know, you just see the name and the fact that he looks like Roman Delid, and he doesn't really seem that significant to you. I think this guy could potentially end up with the middleweight belt if he's lucky. You never fucking know. I'm riding some hype trains recently, man, and I'm liking Imavov. I'm liking how he's looking. So let's make this fight next and see who the real dark horse of the middleweight division is. But I have nothing more to say about this. Let's move on to some of the final fights that I'm going to be talking about today. It is Khamzat Chimaev versus Israel Adesanya. You've got Israel Adesanya coming off of a loss to Dricus du Plessis, where he really, really wasn't looking bad. I would actually personally say he was winning the fight leading up to the finish. And you've got Khamzat Chimaev coming off of one of the most brutal finishes we have seen in recent years in the UFC. The damage it did to Robert Whittaker was unimaginable. Look at his teeth, need I say more? Now, the reason why I want to see Khamzat beat another contender before he fights for the belt, and the reason why I want to see Israel Adesanya fight Khamzat, and I want them to fight pretty soon, is because Khamzat didn't really take that much damage in his last fight. He barely took any at all. Robert Whittaker hit him fucking twice. Go check the stats if you don't believe me. And you've got Adesanya, who didn't really even take that much damage against Dricus, if we're being honest. And I just don't want him to linger around in the background and let all of these title fights go on in middleweight just to Mickey Mouse his way back into a title shot. No, he needs to prove his name and prove that he even deserves to be in the top 5 at all, because he's not really been the most active fighter in the last year or so. So he needs to actually get that activity back up, because he used to be known for being so active, and a win against Khamzat Chimaev is enough in my books to earn another title shot, and that's what I can imagine he wants to do, because now he has Pereira that's just come through to the UFC in the last couple of years, smoked his legacy, smoked him on the all-time list, and, you know, Adesanya's a really disrespected fighter these days. He went from being one of the most loved to most hated, so if he takes out one of the kind of controversial names of the UFC in Khamzat Chimaev, he might get some fans back on his side, and it might roll him on a good hype train back into a title shot. Do I think any of this is going to happen? No. I know I took a good minute to talk about that, but no, I don't think it would. I think Khamzat Chimaev would destroy fucking Adesanya as well, similar to the way that he did fucking Whittaker, man. Like, bro, look at how easily he dominated Whittaker. And Whittaker is someone that a lot of people were saying has some of the best takedown defense in the middleweight division. Adesanya definitely doesn't, and I think that we would see Khamzat have his way with Izzy and just get an absolutely sick name under his belt to take him into the title shot against the winner of the next fight that I'm about to talk about, which is Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. Now, I know there's going to be a couple people saying, no, Khamzat needs the title shot, blah, blah, blah. I completely understand it. And honestly, I won't be annoyed at all if I see Khamzat get the next title shot. Let me make that very clear. I just think that we need to see this fight happen now, or we're probably not going to see it again. Or if we do, it won't be for the belt, because I really think that whoever Khamzat gets his hands on that has the belt by the time his title shot comes around, he will beat. And I think that Sean Strickland is someone that we could probably see in the future going on a bit of a skid. You've got a couple decent rising contenders that have good grappling. You know, your Brendan Allens, your Anthony Hernandez's, whoever the fuck else that we've not really seen yet. And I think these are people that could definitely beat Sean Strickland. And I think we need to see this fight now. Let's just get it out of the way. They both, well, Sean wants it to happen. Drickers doesn't seem as interested. But if we see this in, say, on UFC 310 this December, seeing as Belal Muhammad just pulled out, or in January, that would be great. Because then we could see the Izzy and Khamzat fight around the same time, and then a couple months later, maybe in the summer, maybe just before summer, we could see the big middleweight showdown for the belt. Again, you know, this doesn't necessarily have to happen. I wouldn't mind if Khamzat gets the next title shot. I just feel like so many people now are losing interest in the DDP versus Strickland fight that I need to be one of the ambassadors here to say, yo, that fight is still there. I'm not necessarily saying I want it more than the Khamzat one. If I'm completely honest with you all, I might want to see the Khamzat one. I'm just making this little segment of the video to talk about this fight, just to remind you all that it's still there. You know, if you want to see this fight, it's not a bad take. You know, Strickland did do really well in the first fight and arguably won. I don't think he did, but arguably he did. If it wasn't for that cut in his eye, he probably would have, given his vision and how good his takedown defense was doing. And, you know, I just think this is a really high-level matchup either way. And it would have some really good trash talk and lead up going into it that people just don't really want to think about, or just tend to forget about, given the fact that they just want to see, you know, their fan favorites getting up there. Because just before Khamzat beat Whitaker, they wanted Whitaker to get the title shot. But now it's all switched over to Khamzat, even though you just hated him. MMA fans are some of the most fickle people in the world. That's why it's really hard to get through to them. With takes like this, with takes like, I need to see Sean Strickland fight DDP before I see Khamzat get a title shot, a lot of people are going to hate it, but I think that we might need to see it. So that's all I have to really say for today's video. Probably the loser of this title shot right here goes on to fight Whitaker when he comes back from getting his mouth fixed. But that's all for me, man. That's all for me. Just spitting a couple takes for you all. Hope you enjoyed. I want to say happy Halloween. I hope you're all having a good night. I'm probably going to go out, get into some mischief with the boys, then return home to the crib to watch fucking Batman or some shit. So that's my plans. I don't know about yours, but you know what I'm about to say. You don't have to like, you don't have to subscribe. Do what the fuck you want, man. But I hope you have a nice day, evening, night, whatever the fuck you're doing. And I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace out, motherfuckers.